Most movies don't survive time. They fade, age badly, or get buried under newer, louder spectacles. The Mummy 1999 wasn't supposed to survive either. On paper, it was a bad idea. A remake of a dusty monster movie released at the end of the 90s, starring an actor who wasn't a superstar, directed by a filmmaker willing to defy his own studio. Hollywood expected it to be disposable. Instead, it became unforgettable, and that didn't happen by accident. Every choice behind this film, casting, tone, danger, even near-fatal mistakes, followed a chain of cause and effect that pushed it away from failure and straight into cultural memory. This wasn't luck. It was rebellion disguised as entertainment. And once you see how close The Mummy came to becoming a disaster, you'll never watch it the same way again. 1. The film was never meant to be a blockbuster. At its inception, The Mummy was designed to fail quietly. Universal Pictures didn't see it as a flagship revival, but as a manageable experiment, a low-risk remake of a forgotten monster property. The cause was industry fear. Classic monsters were box office poison by the 1990s. The effect was a stripped-down vision, closer to B-movie horror than cinematic adventure. But this low expectation created an opening. When studio leadership changed after an unrelated financial failure, The Mummy was suddenly promoted from expendable to essential. A project meant to be buried became a gamble worth backing. That pivot didn't just increase the budget, it changed the film's destiny. Because once a studio decides a movie must succeed, everything downstream recalibrates around survival. 2. A studio disaster elsewhere accidentally saved the film. The turning point for The Mummy had nothing to do with ancient curses or desert battles. It came from a talking pig. The box office failure of Babe, Pig in the City triggered executive upheaval at Universal, forcing new leadership to assert control fast. They needed a bold win. The Mummy, already in development, suddenly became the vehicle. Budget expanded, scope widened, creative ambition unlocked. The cause was corporate embarrassment. The effect was creative freedom. Without that failure, The Mummy likely would have remained small, safe, and forgettable. Hollywood history is filled with films born from confidence, but The Mummy was born from panic. And panic, when paired with the right instincts, can be surprisingly powerful. 3. Stephen Sommers refused to make the film Universal wanted. Universal hired Stephen Sommers, expecting a darker, bloodier monster remake. That's what the brand history suggested. But Sommers understood something executives didn't. Fear alone doesn't build longevity, tone does. He pushed for a swashbuckling adventure rooted in humor, romance, and momentum, inspired by Indiana Jones and classic serials. The cause of conflict was creative philosophy. The effect was tension behind the scenes that could have ended his involvement. But Sommers held his ground. He knew that a joyless mummy would vanish, while a spirited one could endure. His refusal wasn't stubbornness, it was foresight. And that single tonal decision shaped every performance, every joke, and every reason the film is still watched today. 4. The wrong star almost defined the entire movie. Leonardo DiCaprio nearly became Rick O'Connell at the height of his post-Titanic fame. On paper, it was a guaranteed win, but star power can suffocate tone. DiCaprio's persona carried weight, intensity, and expectation qualities that would have tilted the film towards seriousness. Scheduling conflicts removed him from contention, not artistic judgment. The cause was contractual rigidity. The effect was accidental casting perfection. Because Rick O'Connell didn't need a god, he needed a man, and that opened the door for Brendan Fraser, whose physicality, warmth, and self-aware charm made the character human instead of heroic. In hindsight, this wasn't a downgrade. It was the correction that saved the film's soul. 5. Brendan Fraser made vulnerability the weapon. Fraser's Rick O'Connell isn't invincible. He panics. He jokes under stress. He survives by adaptability rather than dominance. That was radical in late 90s action cinema. The cause was Fraser's willingness to look foolish. The effect was audience trust. Viewers didn't admire Rick. From a distance, they traveled with him. Fraser brought an old-school quality, reminiscent of Harrison Ford's early work, where competence coexisted with fear. That balance grounded the spectacle. Without it, the film's excess would have felt hollow. With it, every supernatural threat gained weight. Rick's survival felt earned, not guaranteed. And that made the adventure matter. 6. Rachel Weisz anchored intelligence in danger. Evelyn Carnahan could have been decorative. Instead, she became the film's emotional and intellectual anchor. Casting an unknown Rachel Weisz was a risk, but one rooted in logic. The character required intelligence without arrogance and vulnerability without weakness. The cause was restraint in casting. The effect was authenticity. Vice didn't perform cleverness, she embodied curiosity. Her physical comedy humanized her, while her scholarship legitimized the mythology. This balance prevented the film from slipping into parody. Evelyn wasn't dragged into adventure, she earned her place in it. And for audiences, especially older ones, that competence mattered. She wasn't rescued by the story, she propelled it. 7. The desert was not a backdrop, it was an antagonist. Filming in Morocco wasn't aesthetic bravado, it was a logistical gamble. Extreme heat, dehydration, venomous wildlife, and sandstorms plagued the production daily. Nearly the entire cast and crew suffered food poisoning. Schedules collapsed. Scenes were rewritten. The cause was environmental hostility. The effect was realism no soundstage could replicate. You can see exhaustion in the actor's eyes because it was real. The desert didn't decorate the film, it fought it. That struggle translated on screen as physical authenticity. Adventure feels convincing when it costs something. The Mummy looks dangerous because it was. 8. The film relied on pain, not pixels. Despite its reputation, The Mummy leaned heavily on practical effects. Full-scale sets collapsed, real explosions detonated, mechanical scarabs crawled over stunt performers. Arnold Vosloo endured punishing prosthetics that sealed his body for hours at a time. The cause was technological limitation. The effect was timelessness. CGI ages quickly. Physical suffering doesn't. That's why Imhotep still feels present rather than artificial. The film didn't simulate weight, it carried it, and audiences feel that difference instinctively, even decades later. 9. Brendan Fraser nearly died for one scene. The hanging scene, meant to introduce Rick's resilience, crossed into real danger. Safety rigging tightened too long. Fraser lost consciousness. Crew members realized too late. The cause was technical miscalculation. The effect was near tragedy. Fraser recovered and continued filming, never allowing the incident to define the production publicly. That professionalism echoes through the performance. His energy never dips, his humor never hardens. The film doesn't exploit the danger, but it benefits from the authenticity forged by it. Hollywood often simulates risk. The Mummy survived it. 10. Even the jokes were dangerous. One of the film's most beloved comedic moments, the collapsing library, was a high-risk practical stunt. Over 2,000 real books, real shelves engineered to fall in sequence. Rachel Weisz insisted on performing it herself. One mistimed step could have caused serious injury. The cause was commitment to realism. The effect was effortless comedy. Because the danger was real, the laughter feels earned. That scene works because it wasn't designed to be safe, it was designed to be precise. 11. Ancient language gave the villain weight. Imhotep's dialogue wasn't invented. Scholars reconstructed ancient Egyptian for the film. Arnold Vosloo memorized sounds unheard for millennia. The cause was respect for history. The effect was gravitas. Even audiences who don't understand the words feel their age. Authenticity radiates. The villain doesn't speak to intimidate, he speaks to remember. That linguistic weight deepens the myth and separates the Mummy from disposable fantasy. 12. What critics dismissed is why it survived. Upon release, critics called The Mummy excessive, silly, and unserious, but audiences responded differently. They embraced its humor, romance, and confidence. The cause was sincerity. The effect was endurance. What critics saw as weakness became longevity. The Mummy didn't chase trends, it trusted craft. And that is the lesson it leaves behind. Spectacle fades, technology ages, but conviction endures. Films survive not by being perfect, but by knowing exactly what they are. In the end, The Mummy didn't endure because it was louder, darker, or more technologically advanced than its competitors. It endured because it understood something timeless. Audiences don't fall in love with spectacle, they fall in love with conviction. Every risk behind this film, from rejecting studio fear to embracing physical danger and tonal confidence, followed a clear cause and effect truth. When filmmakers trust craft over trends, the work outlives its era. The Mummy reminds us that adventure doesn't need irony, that heroes don't need perfection, and that fun, when taken seriously, can become legacy. For viewers, the lesson is just as clear. The films that stay with us are rarely the safest ones. They're the ones willing to gamble on heart, discipline, and identity. That's why this movie still matters more than 2 decades later. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Hollywood's hidden turning points, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There are more stories buried beneath the surface, and once uncovered, they change how you watch movies forever.